Up everyone, chickity chickity honky honk, it's time to learn the donkey, the hiccup. So, we gotta occupy this dog real quick. He's being crazy. So, we'll do that and we'll start talking about the hiccup. Alright guys, the hiccup. This is a note between two geese. It's them going back and forth, moan cluck, moan cluck, moan cluck, moan cluck, moan cluck, moan cluck, moan cluck. So that's basically the main gist of this note. It's not a run together honk, 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 honk. It's not like that. You've got to make sure to have separation between two notes. So when do geese do this? This is a note between the two geese that kind of is basically like, hey, this is our area. This is where we are. You don't come into our area. And that really shows a really good good chance where you'd use this in the field. So, I mean, it's really just kind of a territorial note that two geese do back and forth. So you can show aggression with it. How I use this note for everything in the field. I use it to align birds, to finish birds, to turn birds around. It's a very, very versatile note. It's one of the most versatile notes you're going to learn because you can do so much with it. Just by changing inflection, tonal variations, how long your moan is, what kind of cluck you got on the back of it. It's just a note that you can do so much with. And this video is not going to be as much about how to do the hiccup, but more of those tonal variations and trying to get different stuff to get your hiccup to do different things. So to start off, this is what a hiccup sounds like. It's a moan followed by a cluck, and that cluck can be like a little peep cluck. It can be a full-blown cluck. This is just a simple example of what a hiccup is. Okay, that's all it is. So it's moan followed by a cluck. Now that we've got that taken care of, let's get a little bit deeper into it. But before we do that, let me reiterate something. You've got to make sure to have separation between your notes, guys. It's just if there's no separation in between it and you're just honking back and forth, it's not going to work right. You've got to make sure that you have punctuation between each note. You've got to start one note before you start the other one. And that's the main thing I want you to work on before moving on. So, I mean, even if you've got to slow it way, way down to be able to get it, slow it down, build a good foundation before moving on and advancing your note further. So, I mean, even if you've got to break it down this slow, do it just to make sure you have it. And slowly build it faster. Okay, and this is a note. You don't have to go a million miles an hour for it to be effective in the field. Listen to geese do it. I mean, sometimes they're going really, really fast with it, faster than any human could possibly go. But there's also ones where you just hear a simple rhythm. If you listen to them, if you go to any park, you go to any lake, you're out fishing or something like that, you're going to hear this note, especially in the spring, because that's when they're kind of getting territorial about their nesting and everything like that. But this note is another one that they do in the field to kind of be like, this is my food, you stay away. So, yeah, get that part down, and once you have that part down, we'll move on to more advanced stuff. All right, the first thing I want to talk about in this more kind of the advanced side of things is goose rhythms. And basically a goose, the best way to kind of start advancing this note and taking it to another level besides just a simple moan, cluck, moan, cluck, moan, cluck, is to add a goose rhythm to it. And geese, I don't know if you remember back to like high school English or something like that, they talk about the elements of like a story. So it starts out in the beginning and it kind of goes up to a climax and then it comes back down. And that's really the way you want to think of a goose rhythm. You're starting low, you're starting simple, nothing's wrong, and then all of a sudden the geese get pissed off at one another and they start escalating it up, getting really pissed off, and then once that resolution is, they'll bring it down. And really, you can kind of play with how fast you bring it up and how fast you can bring it down. I mean, you can bring it up real fast and then drop it off real steep, or you can bring it up slow and then you can bring it down slow again. So it's just a couple different things to play with. I'll do one of each example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start slow, bring it up real fast, and bring it back down real fast. And then I'll do another one where I build it up and then I'll bring it back down. So this is what it's going to sound like, the fast one first. Now a slower one. And that's another thing. You can kind of play around with a little bit of transitions in there, kind of transition out of the hiccups into some push moans and stuff like that. But that's the main thing that you want to get down with that goose rhythm. And geese respond to those goose rhythms unbelievably in the field. It's one good way to really, really turn them. So say if you're just going to, if those birds are coming into you, so say you're hunting and my hand's the birds coming in. If they're coming in towards you and they kind of fade off to one side, what I'll do is I'll hit them real quick with it. And when you do that, they're going to come from this off center and center back up on you. And that's one thing that you really want to work with. And it's one way that you kind of start reading birds. And it's just one more thing that you can play with them. Now, one instance where I might do a little bit more of a gradual turn up is if they're coming towards you, and then they kind of just turn off like they're going to turn away. So right as I see them start to turn off, I'll start it, and I'll build it up, and then as they start coming back toward it, I'll slow it down again. So that's just a couple different instances where you can use this note. And again, you can just play around with it nice and easy when they're coming in, do a little bit of groundwork, and just kind of mix it in if they're just coming straight into you and not really doing anything. That's what this is going to sound like. And again, I mean, you just want to play with different stuff like that. You want to keep experimenting, try different things out, try going fast and slow. So that's really explaining goose rhythms. You want to bring it up and you want to bring it back down. You don't want to just hold it monotone the whole time. I mean, that works, but you're not going to get the most effectiveness out of your calling if you're doing it that way. So now, let's get into tonal variations. All right, guys. So let's play with some tones on the hiccup and different ways we can kind of make this sound different. Let me give you an example, and then once you hear it, I'll explain how to do it, because it's easier to hear it first and explain it later. So this is what we're going to be talking about. Okay, so basically what I did there is I started with a normal, just a calm, nice hiccup. And then all of a sudden, you've got to be able to have that not necessarily, you got to have the confidence in it, but you've got to have that air control to be able to put a lot, or maybe not a lot more air, but a little bit more air into the call. Close your mouth cavity up a little bit, think a higher thought, and open up your hands a bit, and it's going to give it a higher pitch. And what another way that I made it really distinguish itself from the first hiccup was increasing the rhythm. So, I mean, we just started off with a nice, easy bump, 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 and then I hit that point, and I went da 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 da. So that's another thing to really play with, is just having that stark contrast between two different sounds, and it's going to give it a lot more. It's going to sound like there's a lot more geese on the ground, and it's going to help you just have more influence on that flock that's coming in. So, I mean, that's another instance where if they're coming in and they kind of veer off a bit, but they don't align with that hiccup, I'll hit them with it even harder, just to try to get them coming in. I mean, the goal that you want to have eventually with working these birds with a call is to like have them on a rope. So you hear a lot of people that'll say, "Oh, I don't call it birds if they're coming directly toward us." Well, here's the problem with that. If they start to drift off or you start to lose them, you don't have their attention as much. If they're coming towards you and you've got them on just a simple rhythm, if you've got them just listening to your sound and they start to drift off a little bit, if you snap to something else real quick or you hit them with something completely different or kind of shock them into it, if you shock them into reacting, they're a lot more there's a lot better chance that they center up on you real quick. And that just has to deal with those goose rhythms, and it's something you've really got to play with. It's not something that comes overnight. It's something you have to work on working a bunch of geese this way, and you'll be surprised how well calling actually works. There's a lot of people that I've hunted with in the past that have said, "Oh, goose calling, I mean, it works from time to time, but it doesn't work all the time." Guys, goose calling is so effective in the field if you can do it correctly. Just making honks and moans at them, it works from time to time. It'll kill birds. But if you are able to read geese and use these different notes, like the quick spit, like the hiccup, to be able to control the birds, it's going to be like having those birds on a leash and you're just sitting there pulling them towards you. And if they kind of go off, you go, "No, come here." And that's how you can eventually get with a goose call. If you just practice enough, if you practice these different tonal variations and goose rhythms. And like I said, I threw a couple of little things in there, like hitting them with a different tone, different cadence, to be able to turn those birds and align them a little bit more. So yeah, that's just something to play with. It's not something I can really teach too well over a YouTube video, but it's something that I want you to be able to think about. And the next time you're out hunting, maybe you try hitting them with a little bit different tone, a little bit different cadence, and snapping the different stuff like that, and it's going to help improve your calling. Okay, I got sidetracked there, but made some good points about calling geese. But let's get back to the tones. So let's start out with the moan aspect of it. How many different moans can you do on a call? Tons. I mean, let's just think about it. Let's start low with low ones. You can go higher. You can throw a gray eyebrow, like kind of like almost what that last one was. Just a bunch of different ways you can moan on a call, and then follow it up real quick with that little bit of that peep cluck. You can kind of go into a normal cluck with it. There's just so many different combinations you can do once you become fluent with that cadence. The main thing is getting that cadence down of the hiccup, the bump up, bump up, bump up, bump up, and having that separation. Once you have that separation, you've got all the freedom in the world to play with different sounds of the moan, different sounds of the cluck, and just kind of build it in there and kind of get kind of a feeling of different things you can do. So I'm just going to do a couple cadences here, not really cadences, but just a little bit of a sound file almost, to kind of give you some ideas of stuff to work on using the hiccup. So I mean, just listen and try to work on some stuff. And I mean, if you've got any questions, send me a sound file. I'll listen to it, critique it, do whatever, and get it back for you and try to get you to be a better caller. So I mean, this is just some simple hiccup stuff. that's just a couple little examples, stuff you can kind of take from and try to take your calling to the next level with it. All right, guys. Basically, that's the Hiccup. If you got any questions, just ask. I mean, if I don't get back to you right away, I mean, I do work like 10 hours a day. I do have other things going on. But don't be afraid to ask. I have gotten back to each and every person that has asked me questions. I feel like I've been a big help to them. At least I hope I have been. It's just something you got to work on, guys. Follow my channel for more stuff to come. I've got a bunch of other videos in the works. And stay tuned after this one. We got a quick clip of our teal season. I'll have the video out on that later this week. But yeah, thanks guys. Subscribe and share with your buddies because, I mean, again, team calling's a really big aspect of goose hunting. And if you can get a bunch of people on the same page, a bunch of people throwing different goose rhythms in there, you can just make your calling that much more effective. If you need any more reference, get the Goose or the Bad Grammar DVDs by Molt Gear. They're great video. It's a great video. Helped me a lot on calling. Obviously, I've learned a lot of stuff outside of that too, but it's a really good starting point for you for no matter what your skill level is. And all the calling done today was on Molt Gear calls. It's an old style EX3 barrel with a reflex insert. It's actually my comp call. I know, I actually tuned it up for once. But, yeah, so if you got any questions, ask. If not, enjoy this clip from our teal season. Thanks, guys. Take them. Good Jesus!